Hi viewers, you are watching Nurse Educatrix and this is question paper discussion of medical nursing, and this video is part 3 which contains answer briefly and give reasons. We have discussed essay questions in part 1, short notes in part 2, and this is part 3. So answer briefly, there are 4 questions, each carries 4 marks, that is of 16 marks. So the ninth question, as per the question paper order, that is pathophysiological changes in acute glomerulonephritis. So here they have asked only the pathophysiology of glomerulonephritis. So make sure that you have to write the content according to the marks, that is of 4 marks. So anyway, we start with the definition, that is what is acute glomerulonephritis. It is a set of renal disease in which an immunological trigger happens which causes inflammation and proliferation of glomerular tissue, including the different types of cells in the basement membrane. So acute glomerulonephritis is defined as the sudden onset of hematuria, proteinuria and red blood cell casts in the urine. So what is the pathophysiological changes? This is a simplified pathophysiology which I have given here, that is any kind of etiological factors which causes glomerulonephritis, whether it's an infection or non-infectious cause. What it does is it triggers the immune system, that is autoimmune trigger happens here which accumulates or which makes the IgG complex accumulation in the glomerular capsules. So it causes damage to glomerular capillaries as well as the cells which are lined in the glomerulus, which increases the permeability, leads to hematuria and fluid volume overload. So this is the simplified pathophysiology. Any kind of etiological factors, whether it is infection, can be leads to a streptococcal infection or maybe a non-infectious cause which leads to the autoimmune trigger, accumulates the IgG complex which is lining the glomerular capsule, which damages the capillaries as well as the cells. So that leads to increased permeability causing hematuria. You can see patient complaining of hematuria and fluid volume overload, that is edema. So if we see in detail, there are 2 types of changes happening in the pathophysiology, because they have mentioned pathophysiological changes. So what is the changes is it causes 2 types of changes, that is structural and functional changes. So what is the structural changes happens because of this glomerulonephritis? Proliferation of glomerular cells. So abnormal proliferation of cells causing, that is different types of cells, that is endothelial, mesangial and epithelial cells will start to proliferate abnormally. This proliferation may be endocapillary or extracapillary, maybe inside the capillaries of the glomeruli or outside the capillaries. So this leads to thickening of glomerular basement membrane. So the working function will damage because it thickens the glomerular membrane. Also it causes sclerosis. So these are all the structural changes happens. What it does is, like, this inflammatory reaction triggers the proliferation of glomerular cells. This proliferation will happen endocapillary or extracapillary and it thickens the glomerular basement membrane and glomerular sclerosis happens. We'll see what are the functional changes. So the functional changes, because of the damage and proliferation happens in the glomerular capsule, it produces a lot of functional changes which leads to hematuria, that is a major sign in the glomerulonephritis, that is cola colored urine. And proteinuria, usually in glomerulonephritis the proteinuria is mild, whereas nephrotic syndrome has a major proteinuria. Decreased glomerular filtration rate and fluid volume overload which causes edema. So these are all the functional changes happen. So patient will show signs of hematuria, proteinuria, decreased GFR which leads to fluid volume overload and edema. We'll move on to the next question. The 10th question is pemphigus. It's a skin disease which is also autoimmune. They have asked for 4 marks. So what is the definition here? It is a blistering autoimmune disorder that affects the skin and mucous membrane. So it's a blistering autoimmune disease. What is the cause? As it is autoimmune, there is, of course, the etiology is autoimmune, IgG origin. It's a genetically also this autoimmune disease is triggered, and sometimes drug induced autoimmune disease also happens. Here captopril and penicillin may trigger this autoimmune disease. So what is the pathophysiology? Pemphigus antibody is directed towards the cell surface antigen. So what happens? The autoimmune trigger happens towards the cell surface antigen called desmoglein. So the desmoglein is destructed because of this autoimmune IgG trigger. Blister is formed because of antigen antibody reactions. So desmoglein is the cell which is attacked by the autoimmune disease here. The types of pemphigus vulgaris, pemphigus foliaceus and paraneoplastic pemphigus. So pemphigus vulgaris, what happens is most common form of targeting desmoglein 3, and whereas pemphigus foliaceus, that is PF, least severe affecting desmoglein 1. This paraneoplastic pemphigus, that is PNP, is most severe type, which is a complication of a cancer. So pemphigus is of 3 types. The common one is vulgaris, and the less severe form is pemphigus foliaceus, that is PF, and the PNP, that is paraneoplastic pemphigus, is a complication of a cancer and most severe form of pemphigus. So whatever it is, it affects the desmoglein layer of the epidermal cells. What is the clinical manifestation? From the definition itself, it is true that like blisters are formed and there is irregular lesion in oral cavity that are painful and bleed easily and heal slowly. So irregular lesions in oral cavity that are painful and bleed easily and heal slowly. Skin bullae enlarge and rupture accompanied by crusting and oozing. So what happens to the bullae? Bullae is nothing but the blister. It enlarges and gets ruptured, causing crusting and oozing. So from the oozing, the offensive odor from the secretion comes. So when it oozes, it gives a very bad odor. So there is a Nikolsky sign, which is very specific sign in the pemphigus. So you are not supposed to forget this one. So they will ask for or look for this Nikolsky sign in your paper. Dislodgement of intact superficial epidermis by a shearing force. So when you just scrub the skin itself, the whole epidermis comes off. This is called Nikolsky sign. Dislodgement of intact superficial epidermis by a shearing force. Any kind of force which is given in the skin will bring the epidermis layer completely. So these are all the clinical manifestation. Irregular lesion, which is very painful and heal slowly and bleed easily. And the bullae enlarges and ruptures, causing oozing and crusting formation. And this oozing will have a very bad odor. What is the management? As it is autoimmune, the only possibility of treatment is steroids. Corticosteroids are given, some NSAIDs are given, and immunosuppressive drugs like cyclophosphamide and azathioprine is given, and plasmapheresis. So if the autoimmune the antibodies are more, then of course they will think of giving a plasmapheresis, that is they will remove the plasma and give a fresh plasma. That is called plasmapheresis. So this is the management: corticosteroids, immunosuppressive drugs, and plasmapheresis. What is the nursing management? Here the nursing management, you should focus on the pain management, because the patient will have severe pain. If it is oral ulcers, they will have severe pain and they cannot swallow. Meticulous skin care and oral care is essential, and cool wet dressing will comfort them. So you have to provide a wet dressing which is little bit cool. Reduce anxieties in patient and family, because the epidermis is spoiled, so it is a body image disturbance. So of course you should look for patient to relieve the patient's anxiety. Prevention of infection, as the superficial layer is off, so there is possibility of high risk of infection. And if the patient is on immunosuppressive drugs, then they have a higher chance of getting infection. Small and frequent meals will be comforting them. So you have to plan a meal according to their oral ulcers, and you should give them A small and frequent meals. Parenteral nutrition if needed. If the patient cannot eat and the mouth is full of ulcers, of course they have to be given with a parenteral nutrition. So this is all the nursing management. The next question is rabies, that is 11th question. What is the definition and meaning? Here the rabies word comes from the Latin word called to rage. It derived from the Latin word that is rabies. Rabies is a fatal but preventable viral disease that primarily affects the CNS. It is a fatal disease, but it is preventable by the vaccination. It's caused by a virus called rabies virus that is coming from the Rhabdoviridae family. And mode of transmission, animals like cats or dogs or foxes, even bats can spread the rabies virus. Transmission of virus through saliva from the infected person. So what is the clinical manifestation? The patient will show flu-like symptoms, hydrophobia, that is they are scared of water, aerophobia, neurological symptoms, delirium, hallucination, abnormal behavior, confusion and agitation. So these are all the behavior you will expect if the patient is getting rabies disease, but generally if we usually try to prevent it. So what is the diagnostic test done? History of bite. You should ask the patient regarding the history of bite and how severe it is. Physical examination, you have to check the wound where it is where the bite has happened. Direct fluorescent antibody detection can be done in laboratory, and histopathological examination. Exposed exposure prophylaxis. So this is very important aspect. So whenever you write rabies, you remember that you give a topic or heading of post exposure prophylaxis. So wash the bite site immediately with soap and water thoroughly. Careful cleaning, and if needed, debridement should be done immediately. So if the wound is very severe, wound debridement should be done so that the virus, majority of the virus, you can take it out. Passive immunization with immunoglobulin can be done, or active immunization with rabies vaccine. So this is depend on the wound site and how severe the wound is. So they can give with a vaccination or a immunoglobulin of passive immunization. And what is the nursing management of rabies? Provide patient isolation. If the patient is infected, then you have to put them on isolation because their saliva may spread it to the others. Wash hands before and after patient contact to prevent self-contamination and spread of disease. Very important that you have to be careful of hand hygiene. Give emotional and spiritual support to the family by helping them cope with the patient's symptoms and probable death. So of course there is no treatment for the rabies. Of course it is preventable. So whenever you have a bite, don't hesitate and just go for the vaccination. Darken the room, provide a quiet room because they have hydrophobia and aerophobia. This phobia patients, is better to put them in a dark and quiet room. The patient should not be bathed and must have any running water in the room. So they should not have any running water or they should not be bathed, and continuously monitor cardiac and respiratory function. So this is the nursing management of patients with rabies. The next question is 12th question, nursing management of snake bite. So snake bite. Question number 12 is nursing management of snake bite. Snake bite is one of the major medical emergency where the patient need to be managed efficiently. So we need proper management to save the patient from snake bite. So what is the pre-hospital care? Because here they have given only nursing management. You have to write in detail about the care given. Move the patient to place of safety away from the snake. So what you should do first is move the patient away from the safe danger area to a safe area. The patient is instructed to move as little as possible in order to slow the circulation of venom. So typically say that they are not supposed to move. Remove all jewelry, clothing and any constructive item from the affected area because the patient will start to show edema, so which will compress the jewelry and clothing. Immobilize the extremity and keep it below the level of heart. So remember the venom, we don't want it to transfer to the heart, or so what we will do, we will keep the affected area under the heart level or below the heart level. Discourage the patient from smoking, drinking caffeine or using any other stimulants. So arrange transport to hospital. Do not apply tourniquet, cut the incision or suck the wound. So this is very important that you should not supposed to put tourniquet or cut the incision or suck the wound as like you see in cinemas. If the patient is in a remote area, a constricting band can be applied to the wound 2 or 4 inches above the bite, but this action is controversial because it may worsen the effect on the tissue. So putting a constrictive band just above the wound 2 to 4 inches above it can be done if the patient is in very far distance from the hospital, and you have to think about the side effects which it will give also. See, in hospital what you should do, you focus the assessment of ABC, that is airway, breathing and circulation. Monitor patient's vitals, SpO2 and intake output and bleeding, because patient will show signs of bleeding, and intake output should be monitored because of just to check the kidney failure. Large bore IV cannula should be started, and baseline labs should include coagulation profile, CBC, electrolyte panel, blood typing and grouping, platelet count, D-dimer, just to see whether the patient is triggered with any thromboembolism, urine analysis, metabolic panel and liver panel. Oxygen of 2 to 4 liters via nasal cannula should be started. Whether the patient shows any kind of breathing difficulty or not, it is safer to start them on oxygen. ABG and neurological check should be done frequently. So what is the bite site care? The bite area should be examined thoroughly and cleaned with soap and water. The circumference and characteristics of the extremity should be measured and marked every 15 to 30 minutes to evaluate the edema. A tetanus booster is generally recommended. Implications of anti-venom therapy should be started as per the order. Watch patient closely for any complications or signs of complication. Wound should be assessed frequently and covered with a sterile dressing. So this is the bite site care which is to be given when the patient is in hospital. So sometimes what you can do, you can add with the nursing diagnosis and nursing care plan, because they have specifically mentioned nursing management here. So you can add nursing diagnosis and intervention also along with this. Next we will move on to give reasons. There are 2 give reason questions, each carries 4 marks. So the first question here, that is 13th, as per the question paper order, hypocalcemia occurs in chronic renal failure. So what is the reason for hypocalcemia in chronic renal failure? So there are 2 primary causes for hypocalcemia in renal failure patient. The first one is increased serum phosphorus. That is, in renal failure patient, there is increased production of phosphorus causes deposition of serum calcium into bone and tissues. So what happens? Increased production of phosphorus increases the absorption of calcium from the blood to the bone. So this is one reason. And the next reason is decreased renal production of vitamin D. So vitamin D is produced by precursor of vitamin D is produced by the kidney. So this vitamin D is essential for GI calcium absorption. So this causes decreased calcium absorption in the GI tract. So there are 2 reasons. So it is better to write both the reason, because you don't know what reason the answer key has. Okay, hypocalcemia occurs because of increased serum phosphorus which absorbs the calcium from the blood to the bone. And the other one is decreased renal production of vitamin D precursor. The next question is protein restricted diet is advised for patients with gout. So in gout, the protein restriction is encouraged. Why? So you know what is gout? It is a painful form of arthritis that is caused due to high levels of uric acid in the blood. So what happens? This uric acid will form uric acid crystals in the joints, which causes severe pain. So what is uric acid? It is produced when the body breaks down a chemical called purine. So uric acid is an end product of purine. What is purine? It's a product of protein metabolism. So increased amount of protein intake increases the purine amount, which leads to increased amount of uric acid, thereby worsening the gout. So this is the reason. Uric acid is the increased amount of uric acid is the reason for gout. Uric acid is the product of purine derivative, which is a protein metabolism end product, so which increases the uric acid content. So you can write it like this as a give reason. So gout is caused by increased uric acid. Uric acid is produced by breaking down of purine. Purine is a protein metabolism end product. So one of the product in protein metabolism. So restricting protein intake decreases the purine, thereby decreases the uric acid. Hope you understood. I hope that this question paper revision will help you in your exam preparation. Thank you so much. See you again with another question paper.